Hello everybody, my name is Michael and welcome back to Last the First. F1 is officially back after the summer break, having gone through the Dutch Grand Prix, and now we're already on to the Italian Grand Prix with the back-to-back weekend, which is always exciting to get the second half of the season underway. So let's get into some predictions for the Italian Grand Prix. For qualifying, starting with the top five here, with number 5, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. I think Mercedes is going to be slightly back to some of the more recent form that they've been on. They were a little bit down in pace compared to what they thought and maybe most people thought at Zandvoort, but I do think they will get back up into the swing of things a little more. I still think they are going to be off from the top few drivers and few teams, but I do think they will have a better weekend overall. So with fifth place, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. Following that, in fourth place, I'm going to go with George Russell. I think, once again, Russell will continue to have a bit of the edge in qualifying. I don't know what it is with Hamilton in this new era, particularly this year, but he's just really struggling in qualifying. He got knocked out of Q2 last time out at the Dutch Grand Prix, and while it still has been close, he has been on some of the not-so-good ends of qualifying compared to Russell this year. But in the race, it does still seem to favor Hamilton. For number 3, for qualifying, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. I think it will be a better and closer weekend for Oscar Piastri this weekend. He was quite a ways off from Norris last time out, but that was kind of due to a couple mistakes that he had. It seemed like Norris had the edge over him the most of the weekend and definitely during the race regardless, but I think the gap was exaggerated a little bit because of a couple of the mistakes that Oscar Piastri had. So I think overall it will be a much better weekend for him, and I think he'll qualify on the second row. Now for P2, on the front row for qualifying, I'm going to go with Lando Norris. I think the McLaren is definitely going to be extremely strong again. It does seem like it is potentially the best car on the grid and definitely probably the best overall all-rounder car. However, I think this weekend it might just slightly be tipped towards Verstappen's favor, who I think will get pole in qualifying. However, I do think it is going to be super close. You know, traditionally, Red Bull has had a really strong package at Monza in particular because of their DRS advantage. However, McLaren has brought those upgrades in the last race, which really seemed to help their DRS effectiveness. So I think it is going to be extremely close on top of Verstappen and Red Bull having all these experiments and trying to figure out exactly what direction they need to take, or maybe if they took a wrong turn previously. But I think Verstappen will be the difference maker here, and I think he'll be able to just eclipse Norris a little bit to get pole in qualifying. Now for the race, for the top 5, coming in at 5th, I'm going to go with George Russell. I think he will have a pretty standard, decent race for Mercedes. I think they'll score some good points this weekend, and I think they're going to be a little bit in no man's land this weekend a little bit, but I think he will bring it home for a decent result, probably the best that car can do this weekend. Following Russell, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton, and I think, again, kind of similar with qualifying there, just the trend of the season has been Russell getting the best of Hamilton in qualifying, but Hamilton still having that slight pace advantage over him, and just the experience with the tires and just knowing how to handle an entire race. I think it's going to go in Hamilton's favor. Hamilton will hopefully bounce back a little bit from a challenging weekend last time out at the Dutch Grand Prix because of his poor qualifying result, but he did look really strong in the race, and I think he would have had a better result than what Russell did last time out. However, I think 4th and 5th is going to be the absolute maximum that Mercedes can achieve this weekend. I think he will have a stronger race compared to the Dutch Grand Prix. Hopefully, McLaren will be able to get on top of their starting procedures and really have a better start so they're not losing out positions at the beginning of the race, which really negatively impacts their result. But I think Piastri will do a good job this weekend, and I think the McLaren is going to be an absolute rocket ship as well. So I think he'll be on for a good podium. Now going on to second position, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. I think we'll see in this race again a battle between Verstappen and Norris, and I think once again Norris will come out on top. I think the McLaren right now is just the better car, the better all-around car, the better package, and Norris is driving at a really high level, and I think he is going to be able to eclipse Verstappen in the race. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what Zandvoort was. I don't think it's going to be as dominant as what McLaren was able to achieve there, but I think Norris will still be able to eclipse him. I think Verstappen, like I mentioned earlier, will really be the difference maker. I think he'll make a big difference in qualifying to get a good result, and then I think he's also going to be able to hold Piastri at bay for second place, which is important for his championship hopes, which somehow the hope for McLaren still seems to be alive for the drivers, which it is an incredibly long shot. But, second versus third makes a big difference over the next few races here. So I think Verstappen will bring home in second and just continue to be bagging just enough points to hold on until the end of the year. But Red Bull definitely are under pressure for the constructors. It's really looking like they're going to be eclipsed there, and they need to figure out some new directions to take on McLaren for the rest of this year and into next year. A couple miscellaneous things I wanted to touch on regarding the race and qualifying. One thing with my predictions for Mercedes, while I think they will have a stronger weekend, there have been some rumor mills about the new surface on the track at Monza going to have a negative impact on Mercedes. I don't know exactly why, if they'll have tire warm-up issues or what the case will be, but definitely keep a lookout for that. If they do struggle a bit this weekend, it might be due to that track resurfacing. So we'll see. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Also, as you can see, once again, I'm not predicting Sergio Perez to be in the top 5 of quali or the race. I'm sure it'll be a fairly standard okay race for Perez, but I think he'll be outside of the top 5, and I think McLaren's going to make another big inroad in the Constructors' Championship with Perez being in 6th or lower. I would not be surprised at all. I don't envision it being a complete disaster for him, but I think it's going to be kind of similar to Zandvoort, where he's definitely several tenths off Verstappen, and it's going to be enough for him to be outside of the top 5 and lose some precious points for Red Bull. Now, for the disaster class of the weekend, I'm actually going to go with Ferrari for their home race. I think it's going to be a tough weekend out for the Tifosi, and that is primarily because of their porpoising struggles as of late with their new upgrades in Spain. I know they do have some more upgrades coming for the race here at Monza, but I don't know. It's tough to have a lot of faith in Ferrari given their history. I know things have been a lot better under Fred Vasseur's leadership. However, they still have yet to show that they can properly develop a car throughout the season, and I don't have a ton of faith that they're going to be able to get on top of these porpoising issues right away. Hopefully, for their sake, it'll be a little stronger than what I'm envisioning it to be. I think they're just going to be, with Monza being entirely straight lines, I think they're going to have to really sacrifice a lot of performance, so they're not wearing out the plank of the car with the porpoising issues. But we don't know, because it was very, very surprising to see their pace at Zandvoort last weekend, particularly with Leclerc. He was on absolute fire, getting a really unexpected podium. I know a few things had to go his way with some of the other drivers, getting him needing to get ahead at the start and having track position, pitting early to maintain that track position. But he still had really strong pace, and the Ferrari looked decent in race trim. It just seems like when nowadays in qualifying, in particular, the Ferrari just isn't able to quite reach the peak of what it's capable of because it starts hitting up against that ceiling of porpoising. But I think they are going to struggle quite a lot this weekend, and it's going to be a tough weekend out for the Tifosi. Now, I'm going to go with Williams for my masterclass of the weekend. And I know they don't quite have the straight line speed advantage that they've had in the past. to really make a difference here at Monza. They did just have a brand new upgrade package at the Dutch Grand Prix, and it did seem to be working well, aside from when Sargent bended into the wall and Albon got disqualified. But they did seem that the package was working well. So I think they are going to be an outside contender for a few points, which will be good for them. And crazy enough, just today at the time of recording here, Williams announced they're dropping Sargent for the rest of the season, with Franco Colapinto stepping in for the rest of the season. It's a weird one. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like it's really just a sideways step, because you're taking Logan Sargent, crash happy, not quick enough, and you're replacing him with a completely unproven rookie who's doing a decent job in F2, but he's not lighting things up. He's not lighting up the timing sheets, and it's going to be a tough ask for him to get in there and try to make a difference. I guess there is potentially more upside to having Franco in the car than what Logan Sargent has shown. I mean, we've seen what Logan Sargent is capable of, and that's just simply not enough. So I guess at worst, Franco will be the same as Logan Sargent, but at best, there might be a little more upside where hopefully he's crashing less than Sargent, and who knows, maybe he can bring home a point or two at some point during the last bit of the season. I know Williams, I'm sure they would have preferred to have Liam Lawson, but it seems like Red Bull just doesn't want to let him go, or they're willing to, but they would want to be able to call him up at any time, and that just doesn't make any sense for Williams, because then they would be left without a driver. And yeah, I don't blame Red Bull. They want to have him on standby just in case they need to drop Perez, which is seeming like it could be a real possibility. He's still got a few opportunities to perform decent at the level that he performed at in Zandvoort. I don't know. It's like right on the edge of if that's going to be enough to keep him or drop him. He was a few tenths off in qualifying, and then that showed in the race as well, that he was several points positions lower, even with the floor that should theoretically be about 2/10 quicker. So that definitely doesn't look good, but overall it seemed like a pretty neutral weekend for Perez. It wasn't great, but it wasn't one of his worst weekends. So we'll see how the next couple play out, and then who knows, we might see a Ricciardo or a Lawson in that seat for the rest of the year. Lastly, for my bold prediction of the weekend, it's going to be Alex Albon with Williams, and I think he's going to have a really solid result. I think he's going to finish at least 9th or better in the race, and I think those upgrades will show that Williams is on a good trajectory, and I think it's going to continue to show that Carlos Sainz made a good call choosing them over Audi, at least for the short-term future. I mean, look at Sauber's last weekend. It was absolutely atrocious, and it doesn't look like they have any kind of direction of where they're going or how they can fix their problems. So Williams looks like it's on a good trajectory, fortunately enough for Sainz. So yeah, I think Albon will have a good result this weekend. I think he should have this past weekend. If it wasn't for the disqualification, he would have been starting 8th, which is a really tremendous result, and I think there's a really good chance that he could have scored a point or two in that race. But yeah, I think overall he'll have another strong weekend, and like I mentioned before, they don't quite have that straight line advantage that they used to a couple of years ago. They're a bit more well-rounded, the Williams car is now, but I think with that new upgrade, it's going to make a difference, and they're going to be an outside contender for some points. So those are my predictions for the Italian Grand Prix. It's been a while since I recorded a podcast, so it is good to be back. This has been one of the best seasons of Formula One that I've seen, really ever, in my 10 years of watching. So it's really come alive. Who would have thought this season has turned out to be what it has at the beginning of the season? It's quite the turnaround. But I'm excited to get this race underway and excited to finish out the season strong. Follow me on X or Twitter, F1rst Real, first with F1, and then on Instagram as F1rst. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next one.